This is NDTV. And you're watching NDTV Prime.
Salarpuria Sattva. Trust, it's what we build. Presents the Realty Debate with Manisha Natarajan.
2016 was a landmark year for one thing in real estate, RERA, or the Real Estate Regulator, for an industry which had so far been free for all. RERA rules and structure was finally notified by the centre or the union government. But as we enter 2017, we realize that the biggest disappointment of this year for Indian consumers and buyers has been the implementation of RERA by Indian states or at the state level. The few who have notified it have diluted some clauses of that perfect RERA which was notified by Ministry of Housing after much lobbying by groups like Fight for RERA. And states which have diluted it also include BJP-led states. So the question we are asking in today's Realty Debate, is the model RERA simply going to be a mute model adopted by none? And why is it that such few states have even come out with the final RERA rule or draft rules and missed several deadlines? Joining me today, Abhay Upadhyay, National Convener, Fight for RERA, Dr. M. Ramachandran, former Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development, Pankaj Bajaj, MD Eldeco Infrastructure and Properties Limited. So we've actually got all three grounds covered or all three sides covered of this debate. The policymakers, the developer and the buyer interests being represented by Abhay. Okay, before I begin the debate, very quick look at who's notified the final rules. Amongst those are UP, that's Uttar Pradesh. Before going to polls, I think they've done a commendable job at least to come out with rules. We'll come to how much have they diluted. Gujarat and Delhi and Union Territories. Those are, of course, very tiny markets. States where draft rules are out are Maharashtra, MP, Karnataka. Large states, rest, of course, have not even started work, but I'm only going to name some of the large states which are under the focus: Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Arunachal, Mizoram, etc. Abhay, I'm going to come straight to you. This week there was a meeting, Mohupa called a meeting, and I believe Mr. Venkaiah Naidu said very, very candidly, RERA has to be implemented and it cannot be diluted. Yet that message does not seem to be going through at all.
Well, Manisha, it is a very welcome step taken by the Ministry of HUPA, and we are very happy that we had given that suggestion way back on 7th of November by writing to the Prime Minister to call this kind of a meeting, because states after states who were coming out with draft rules were diluting the rules in favor of the builders, and we were ending if these rules go through, then the whole RERA Act will become redundant and it will not going to achieve its objective. And I have seen the press release given by the Ministry of HUPA today, and it appears that Honorable Minister for Housing Venkaiah Naidu ji has given clear, in no uncertain terms, he has mentioned that RERA has to be implemented in its letter and spirit, and that the states have no power to dilute whatsoever with regard to ongoing projects or any other clause of the RERA. And I hope that now the state governments who are represented there have got those clarification, and whichever states has diluted, like Gujarat has diluted the rules, like UP has done it, Madhya Pradesh has done it, Delhi has also in fact done the same thing. So they will now go back and revoke all those diluted provisions and come out with the fresh rules.
All right. Okay. Abhay, before I go to my panelists, I just want to know what are your, let's not go to each state rules or drafts, all right? I want to know from you which are the 3 or 4 big areas of concern where the dilution is happening, because it's very tedious to go state by state.
Well, first thing, what most of the states have done is to exclude somehow, on some pretext or the other, the ongoing projects. Okay. Now, this is the very serious concern of all home buyers. As you know, they have been stuck for last more than a decade now. Money has already been taken by the builders. Nothing is coming through.
So ongoing projects, we know the pain there. What else?
And now secondly, there's the disclosure part that also being eliminated. Now, as you know, was very necessary for all the states to come to put a provision in the rules that all the sanction plan from the beginning has to be given at the time of registration. Now, those has been compromised. Now, similarly, what the states have done, they have notified the rules, which was actually the draft rule of HUPA. Now, that has many loopholes, big loopholes. So if that is notified, then obviously all those loopholes are there, and ongoing projects have been completely ignored and the draft of HUPA rules. So ongoing projects.
So you're saying that the okay, I got you, Abhay. All right. So let's carry forward the debate. So you're saying, if I can understand, number one, ongoing projects being excluded through some pretext or the other, which is the biggest problem today, or the crisis of trust. And the second thing is that RERA was meant to bring in transparency. So far, the buyer was getting into the project without knowing whether the plans were sanctioned, whether anything was changed, whether there are any cases pending against the developer. Now, all of those in many of the draft rules and the notified rules have also got this thing. All right, Abhay, you'll get your chance. We have to give others also a chance to talk. These are the two big concerns, and they are very big concerns. Dr. Ramachandran, developer lobby says that ongoing projects, including them in RERA, is absolutely futile because those developers have run out of money, and what are you going to be able to do? My question to you is, there's going to be absolutely no fear, no pressure on those developers who've been hanging on with projects for 8 to 10 years to even complete them now, because we do know that they could fish out money, they could sell some of their land parcels, and if they had the intention, they can complete their projects. Would you agree, sir?
I'm not sure whether that's the situation, because the central legislation provides for what can be not included or exempted is where the completion certificate has already been issued. So if the completion certificate has not been issued, it would still come under the jurisdiction of the new act. So I do not know how states have gone around and circumvented, if at all some state has done it. First of all, I have my doubts whether states can circumvent it, because the rules follow the act. So how can you circumvent a provision of the act and make a rule? That means if you go to court, immediately it will be quashed.
All right.
So it all depends on what has been circumvented, what dilution has happened. Of course, there is a message in what the minister has said today that states cannot do this. And if 4 states have notified it, and there are some 11 or 12 states which are ready to notify, I suppose those who are ready to notify will take note of this. So I'm not absolutely certain that the provisions of the legislation can be bypassed while making rules.
You know, at the time of announcing the central RERA rules or notifying it, there was a statement made by the minister where he said, now I'm leaving up to the states to make changes as required, or I would say another word. I mean, I don't particularly remember, Abhay, what that word was, but he did leave a little bit of room which could be interpreted as a large room for states to make those changes. Do you think that has been misused, Abhay?
Well, I don't think that is the reason, because what my experience has been till now, that most of the state governments are being approached by the builder lobby. Now they are explaining what is the benefit. They are crying that, you know, the real estate industry will come to a complete halt and that we will suffer and that this industry will totally close down. So these are the things which is playing on the minds of the states, and they are coming under influence of builder lobby. I don't think that what minister said, people are waited there and they have listened his speech completely. So my view is that now, since builder have failed to influence the central government, Ministry of HUPA, so now this is a last ditch effort being done by the builder lobby to ensure that whatever dilution they can possibly get.
Let's find out from the builders. All right, let's find out from the builders. We've got Pankaj Bajaj here. Pankaj, is the builder lobby really pressurizing? And if it is pressurizing for some amount of leeway in RERA, what is the reason?
First of all, there's no builder lobby as such. Right? The builders compete with each other, and you can see the number of ads and the competing offerings that they have. So there's no lobby as such. But there, like in any industry, there is sometimes there is fruitful engagement with the government, and we do give forward in our formal and informal forums. We do give forward our points of view. Now, as to your point that the minister inadvertently gave a window to the various states to dilute the act, I don't think that's fair, because frankly this is...
I'm only asking a question. My job is to ask a question. I'm not saying that he did.
So,
I'm saying, was it misused by saying that
so
states can adapt it? Did states take it as like we could dilute it?
Let me give you an example. It's a state subject. Every state has an apartment act.
Sure.
So UP has a UP apartment act, and there was an apartment act in 2012. There was an apartment act in 1975. Some of these acts, and there's a new act which has been promulgated, which is the RERA, and many of the provisions are in conflict with each other. As for the existing projects being excluded, now if a project was, say, completed in the year 1980, I'm giving an absurd example, and people have been living there for the last 20 years, should it come under the new act? But there's no completion certificate, because there was never any practice of completion certificate.
Okay.
The authorities in UP never gave any completion certificate.
No, so the UP clause says it has exempted those ongoing projects without completion certificate where 60% of people are residing in particular projects if an application has already been filed by a builder with the authority of the certificate. But would you agree, Pankaj, that there could be a project, it's a large project which is happening in phases. This is totally open to interpretation and misuse. If it's a large project like Wishtown happening in phases, if 60% is complete but 40% isn't, those 40% buyers are still stuck.
So there are lacuna in the original act that you should have the provision of dividing the project into phases. Now the phase 1 where most of the 60% inhabitation has happened, that would be deemed to be 100% and the rest would come under the act.
Okay.
But the act does not provide for it. So these are the anomalies that are being tried to be addressed. So it has to be fair to all the stakeholders. I've given you that example is not completely absurd because it's an actual example.
Okay.
There is a project in Lucknow which was completed in 1980. People have been living for the last 30 years. The services have been handed over to the local authorities. The water supply is taken care of by the Jal Nigam. But there is no completion certificate.
But why?
Because there was never any provision of a completion certificate.
Right.
Now what do you do?
So are you saying that that's the only reason why this clause has been given exemption?
Yes, of course.
And it will not be misused?
If you look at the...
It will not be misused?
Yes, obviously not.
Do you believe that this is not going to be misused? Because we're all going to be here 5 years later as well.
I don't think it's going to be misused, because if you look at the exemptions which have been given in UP, those are exactly the kind of exemptions which it is allowing. It is not allowing anybody an escape window.
The other one in UP which is happening, and Pankaj, I think this is again a question to be asked. Several imprisonment clauses have been made into compounding clauses where money is paid in lieu of actual punishment. Builders can avoid punishment for any fault by just paying a simple fine. Again, the problem, and I'm going to come to Dr. Ramachandran for this. Dr. Ramachandran, the problem is that, in this country, really no one goes to prison for big financial criminal acts, and this is a financial criminal act, isn't it? I mean, you take someone's money, you promise them a home, and that home doesn't come in 8 to 10 years. Someone's head, or someone has to be imprisoned for it, but it doesn't happen. Do you think by putting this clause, they have diluted the model RERA?
Again, we have to be clear whether the states have diluted in the form of rules, because the act itself provides for compounding the offence.
Uttar Pradesh has. They've said
no. The act itself provides for compounding by paying a fine.
Yes. Okay.
So it's there. So it's not that only imprisonment is the option given to the authority under the act. It is, they started with the word imprisonment, but they said it can be compounded by paying the fine.
All right.
So the authorities which would come into existence, the tribunal which would come into existence, and further to that high courts will further look into this, but no one can go against the provision of the act itself. So I think we should also remember, it's for the first time such a legislation has come into existence.
All right.
There was tremendous amount of resistance till then. So to be fair, the central government has been successful in bringing about this legislation. So there could have been some balancing as far as the various sections are concerned.
Okay.
So about the imprisonment part, let's be very clear that it is provided for in the act itself, and the rules only follow the act.